Hi everybody, it's Mrs. Haugen. Today we're going to be working on two different goals on our Lesson 2 problem set, so make sure you have your blue math packet in front of you. Today we're going to be doing two things. We're going to be creating picture graphs and analyzing data. So yesterday we worked on creating the data table, and today that's already done for us. We're taking that data and we're using it to create a picture graph. So we will be using this large graphing area to the side. And then after we've done that, we will be working on analyzing the data or answering the questions. Okay, so it says use grid paper to create a picture graph below using data provided in the table. Then answer the questions. So you can see that we have our little data table here. And again, we have those same three parts that we had on our yesterday's data tables. So do you remember those three parts? On the top, we have a title. And then in the middle, we have, do you remember that big word? Categories. And then on the bottom is where we actually have our, I don't think that word's going to fit in there. I have to get rid of that. On the bottom, we actually have the data. And this time you see that we did not use tally marks for the data table. We just wrote in the numbers, which is completely fine too. So we're going to take that information and we're going to create a picture graph. Now, here's the cool part. They want a title. We already have a title, right? We have a title for the data table. We're going to use that for our title for the graph. So I'm going to type it. I want you to write this down. Central Park Zoo Animals. That is going to be our title. So go ahead and write that down in your packet. You see at the bottom we have more blanks. At the bottom we have 4 blanks here, and that is where we need to write the categories. Now, they don't give us a lot of room to write the whole word, so if you just want to write the first letter, like in the first blank you could write B for birds, and in the second blank you could write F for fish. Go ahead and do this. M for mammals, and R for reptiles. Ideally, we would be able to write the whole word, but they only give us that teeny tiny line. So today it's okay if you're just writing the first letter. You just need to understand that those are the categories. The last part we see here where the blank is on the bottom is a legend. And a legend just tells us what everything in the picture graph means. We are actually going to be drawing not a bar graph, so not like a solid colored bar. We're actually be going to draw in little symbols in these little boxes in the graph. So you can draw whatever symbol you'd like. I'm going to choose to write a circle. So every time I draw a circle, that is going to equal 1 animal. So on your legend line in your math packet, write this down. You might choose to put an X, and that equals 1 animal. You might choose to draw a heart. That could equal 1 animal. Your choice. As long as you write down in your legend what your symbol means. And your symbol, whatever that might be, whatever shape, equals 1 animal. So now we get to create our picture graph. We see in the data table that there are 6 birds. So I'm going to draw 6 circles in the bird column. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. If you chose to write X's, you will write 6 X's in the bird column. Now for the fish column, we see there are 5. So I will continue with my circles because that is the symbol I chose, and I will draw 5 circles. Your turn. Make sure you are sticking with your same symbol. We don't change symbols every time. So if you chose X's, you put 5 X's. If you chose circles also, you'll put 5 circles. For M, we're writing about mammals. So I see there are 11 mammals here. So I'm going to have to write 11 circles, which is why I chose circles. They're easy for me to write on the computer here. So what is that? 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. 11 mammals. And lastly, our last column here is reptiles. And we see from our data table that there are 3. So we will do 1, 2, 3 reptiles. Okay? So we've done our first goal today. We've created the picture graph that goes with the data table. The next thing we have to do is answer the question. So this is where we're analyzing the data. We're looking at the graph, we're looking at the data table, and we're answering the questions. So letter A says, how many more animals are mammals than fish? Well, we know that how many more tells me I need to subtract. And again, I want you to write down the numbers. The more you write down, the less it has to just stay in your head for you to remember. Mammals, well, the data table tells me there's 11. And fish, there are 5. So if I want to know how many more, I am subtracting. I will start with my bigger number, which is 11. So I know that 11 minus 5 equals 6. So there are 6 more mammals than fish in this zoo. Let's look at B. How many more animals are mammals and fish than birds and reptiles? So 2 things here. I see mammals and fish are together, and I see, let me change my color because this is different. Let's do green. And I see birds and reptiles are also together. So the first thing I need to do is I need to add mammals plus fish, and then separately I need to add birds plus reptiles. So let's write these numbers down. I'll go back to my purple. For mammals, there's 11, and for fish, there's 5. And I know that 11 plus 5 equals what? 16. So go ahead and write all that down. Again, the more you write down, the less you just have to hold in your head and try to remember. So now I'm going to switch back to green because we need to go to the birds and reptiles. So for birds, there's 6, and the data table tells me there's 3 reptiles. So altogether, birds plus reptiles is 9. So I've got 2 numbers now. I've got a 16, mammals and fish, and 9, birds and reptiles. Now the final part of this problem is to answer that question, how many more? Well, we know from the last one that how many more tells me I need to subtract. So starting with the big number, 16, my job is to subtract 16 minus 9 to get my final answer. And what is that? 7. So my final answer here is 7. There are 7 more mammals and fish than there are birds and reptiles. Boys and girls, this was a 3-step problem. First, we had to figure out the total mammals and fish. Then we had to figure out the total birds and reptiles. And then last, in order to get our final answer, we had to subtract those 2 numbers. Again, this is not something you can just rush through. You have to take it step by step, reading every single thing. The last one is C. How many fewer animals are reptiles than mammals? So let's write these numbers down. Reptiles, the data table tells me there's 3. Mammals, the data table tells me there's 11. Now again, how many fewer tells me I need to subtract. And I know I need to start with my bigger number, so I have to start with 11 and take away 3, and that equals 8. Oops. So my answer for C is that there are 8 fewer reptiles than mammals. Boys and girls, for these problems, you really, really have to take your time. You see, they don't give us a whole lot of room, so if you needed to do your work on the space at the bottom, that's totally fine. When you're doing your work in Classkick, make sure you write down all of these little numbers, because the more you write down, the less you just have to remember in your head. So take your time and do your very best work. I will talk to you soon.